In this story, you'll discover how a single revelation turned a loving relationship into a journey through doubt and heartache, leading to an uncertain future. My name is John Harris, and I'm a 29-year-old marketing executive living in San Diego, California. For the past 2 years, I've been dating Emily Brown. She's 27 and works as an HR specialist at a mid-sized tech company. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue and hit it off almost instantly. Emily's got this vibrant energy that just lights up a room, and I was drawn to her from the start. We've been living together in a cozy apartment in the heart of San Diego. Life was pretty routine. Work, weekend trips to the beach, dinners with friends, until one evening that changed everything. It was a Thursday night, and I'd just gotten home from a long day at the office. I dropped my bag by the door and found Emily sitting on the couch, nervously fiddling with her hands. She looked up at me, and I knew something was up. "John, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling slightly. I sat down next to her, my mind racing with possibilities. Did something happen at work? Was she upset with me about something? But nothing could have prepared me for what she was about to say. "John, I'm pregnant." For a moment, I just stared at her, trying to process the words. Pregnant? How? We'd always been so careful with contraception. A mix of emotions hit me: confusion, fear, and, surprisingly, a bit of joy. "Are you sure?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Emily nodded, her eyes welling up with tears. "I took 2 tests, both positive." I pulled her into a hug, my mind still reeling. "Wow, Emily, it's unexpected, but it's amazing too." Over the next few weeks, my life began to change. I adjusted my work schedule so I could attend all of Emily's medical appointments. We started planning for the baby, buying furniture, painting the spare room, and researching parenting tips. Emily seemed happy, but there was a distance growing between us that I couldn't quite put my finger on. One day, Emily came home from work and told me she had a doctor's appointment the next morning. I offered to go with her, as I always did. "It's just a routine checkup," she said quickly. "You don't need to take time off work for this one." I frowned but didn't press the issue. "Are you sure?" "I want to be there for you and the baby." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sure, John. It's nothing major." Decided to trust her, but the nagging feeling in the back of my mind wouldn't go away. Why didn't she want me to come? Was there something she wasn't telling me? That evening, as we sat down for dinner, I couldn't help but voice my concerns. "Emily, is everything okay? You've been acting a bit distant lately." Emily looked up from her plate, her expression guarded. "It's just the hormones, John. Pregnancy is stressful." Nodded, trying to be understanding. "I get that, but you know you can talk to me about anything, right?" She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I know. I appreciate it, John." Despite her reassurances, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Over the next few weeks, Emily's behavior grew even more secretive. She'd take phone calls in the other room, and I noticed she was texting a lot more than usual. One night, curiosity got the better of me. While Emily was asleep, I checked her phone. I know it was a breach of trust, but my gut was screaming at me that something was wrong. What I found confirmed my worst fears. There were messages from her boss, Mark Davis. The tone of the messages was way too familiar, too intimate for a boss-employee relationship. My heart pounded as I scrolled through the texts, my hands shaking. "Had a great time last night. Can't wait to see you again." One message read. My mind raced with questions. What was going on between Emily and Mark? Could he be the father of the baby she was carrying? I felt a surge of anger and betrayal, but I knew I needed to talk to Emily before jumping to conclusions. The next morning, I confronted her. "Emily, what's going on with you and Mark?" asked, holding up her phone. Her face went pale, and she looked like she might faint. "John, it's complicated," she stammered. "Is there a chance the baby isn't mine?" I demanded, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and hurt. Emily burst into tears. "I don't know, John. I'm so sorry. There's a chance it might be his." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. My world was crashing down, and I didn't know how to fix it. I knew then that nothing would ever be the same. After Emily's confession, I felt like I was living in a fog. The days seemed to blur together, each one weighed down by the uncertainty of our situation. Emily and I tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, but it was impossible to ignore the tension between us. Despite everything, I couldn't abandon her. She was still carrying a baby, and until we knew for sure, I had to be there. So I continued to attend her medical appointments, though each visit felt like walking on eggshells. One Friday afternoon, we had an ultrasound appointment. I had taken the day off work, determined to support Emily despite my mixed feelings. We sat in the waiting room, the sterile smell of disinfectant filling the air. Emily's leg bounced nervously, and she kept glancing at her phone. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She nodded, but her eyes didn't meet mine. "Yeah, just a lot on my mind." The ultrasound technician called us in, and Emily lay down on the examination table. As the technician moved the probe over Emily's belly, the room filled with the rhythmic whoosh-whoosh of the baby's heartbeat. It was a sound that should have brought joy, but instead, it was a reminder of the uncertainty we faced. "Looks like everything is progressing well," the technician said, smiling at us. "Would you like to know the gender?" Emily looked at me, her eyes searching mine for an answer. I swallowed hard, feeling a lump in my throat. "Sure," I said, forcing a smile. "It's a boy," the technician announced. A boy. The word echoed in my mind as we left the clinic. We were having a son, but I couldn't shake the nagging doubt that he might not be mine. The weight of the unknown hung over us like a dark cloud. Back at home, Emily retreated to the bedroom, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I wandered into the spare room, now half-painted in soft blue. I stared at the crib we had assembled together, feeling a mix of pride and pain. This was supposed to be a happy time, but instead, it felt like we were walking through a minefield. As the weeks passed, Emily's behavior grew more erratic. She would disappear for hours, claiming she needed some space, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. One evening, I decided to confront her. "Emily, we need to talk," I said, finding her in the kitchen. She was chopping vegetables for dinner, but her hand stilled at my words. "About what?" she replied, not looking up. "About us. About what's really going on." She sighed and put down the knife, finally meeting my gaze. "John, I'm scared. I don't know what's going to happen, and it's tearing me apart." I stepped closer, my frustration melting into empathy. "I'm scared too, Emily, but we need to be honest with each other if we're going to get through this." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't want to lose you, John. I love you, but I don't know if I can fix this. Let's take it one step at a time," I said, pulling her into a hug. "We'll figure it out together." In the following days, we made a pact to communicate better. Emily promised to be more open, and I vowed to be more patient. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. One weekend, we decided to go for a walk along the beach. San Diego's coastline was our favorite escape, a place where we could clear our heads and reconnect. As we strolled along the shore, the salty breeze whipping through our hair, I felt a glimmer of hope. "John, can we really get past this?" Emily asked, her voice barely audible over the sound of crashing waves. "I think we can," I replied, squeezing her hand. "It's not going to be easy, but I'm willing to try if you are." She smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "I am. I want us to be okay." It wasn't much, but it was a start. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of optimism. We still had a long way to go, and the road ahead was uncertain, but at least we were facing it together. Weeks passed, and Emily and I continued our fragile attempt at normalcy. We took more walks along the beach, had more honest conversations, and tried to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. Yet, despite our efforts, a shadow of doubt lingered over us. One evening, as we were having dinner, Emily's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen and quickly silenced it, her face tense. I couldn't ignore it any longer. "Emily, who was that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She looked at me, her eyes filled with guilt. It was Mark. The name felt like a punch to the gut. "Why is he still contacting you?" "He's been asking about the baby," she admitted, looking down at her plate. "I think he's scared too." I felt a surge of anger. "Emily, we need to get a paternity test. We can't keep living like this, not knowing." She nodded slowly. "You're right. I'll call and schedule one tomorrow." The next few days were a blur of anxiety. We barely spoke, each of us lost in our own thoughts. Finally, the day of the test arrived. We went to the clinic together, the tension between us palpable. The nurse led us to a small, sterile room and explained the procedure. I watched as they swabbed Emily's cheek and then mine. It was a simple, quick process, but the weight of what it represented was immense. "It will take a few days to get the results," the nurse said, giving us a sympathetic smile. "We'll call you as soon as we have them." The waiting was torture. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart would race, but it was never the call we were waiting for. Emily and I barely spoke, the silence between us heavy and suffocating. One evening, I came home to find Emily sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the television. She looked up as I walked in, her eyes red from crying. "John, I'm so sorry," she whispered. I sat down next to her, feeling a lump in my throat. "I know, Emily. We'll get through this, one way or another." 3 days later, the call finally came. Emily and I sat together on the couch, holding hands tightly as I answered the phone. "Hello, Mr. Harris. This is the clinic. We have your test results." I took a deep breath. "And?" "I'm sorry, but the results show that you are not the biological father." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt the room spinning, and Emily's grip on my hand tightened. I ended the call and stared at the phone in disbelief. "It's Mark's," I said, my voice hollow. Emily burst into tears. "John, I'm so sorry. I never wanted this to happen. I don't know how to fix it." Stood up, feeling a mix of anger, sadness, and betrayal. "I need some air," I said, walking towards the door. "John, please don't leave," she pleaded. But I couldn't stay. Needed to clear my head, to process what this meant for us. I walked down to the beach, the place that had always brought me peace. As I stood there, staring out at the ocean, I felt a wave of emotions crashing over me. How had everything gone so wrong? We were supposed to be building a life together, but now it felt like everything had been a lie. I spent hours walking up and down the shore, lost in my thoughts. Eventually, I knew I had to face the reality of the situation. I couldn't change what had happened, but I could decide what to do next. When I returned home, Emily was still on the couch, looking like she hadn't moved an inch. She looked up as I walked in, her eyes filled with fear and regret. "John," I held up a hand to stop her. "Emily, I need to know the truth. Did you ever love me?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Yes, John. I do love you, but I made a terrible mistake." I nodded, feeling a strange sense of calm. "I believe you, but I don't think I can move past this. I need some time to think about everything." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand." I grabbed a few things and decided to stay with a friend for a while. I needed space to figure out what I wanted and how to move forward. Over the next few weeks, I spent a lot of time reflecting on my relationship with Emily. Talked to friends, sought advice, and tried to understand how we had ended up here. The pain of betrayal was deep, but I knew I needed to find a way to heal. One evening, as I sat on my friend's porch, I received a message from Emily. She wanted to talk, to see if there was any way we could salvage our relationship. I agreed to meet her, knowing that we needed closure, one way or another. We met at a small cafe, neutral place where we could talk without the weight of our shared home bearing down on us. Emily looked nervous, but determined. "John, I know I've hurt you deeply," she began. "I have been seeing a therapist, trying to understand why I did what I did. Know it's a lot to ask, but is there any chance we can rebuild what we had?" I looked at her, feeling a mix of emotions. "Emily, I appreciate that you're trying to make things right, but I don't know if I can ever fully trust you again." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Understand. I just needed to know if there was any hope." I sighed, feeling the weight of the decision. "I think we both need time to heal, separately. Maybe one day we can be friends, but right now, I need to focus on myself." She nodded, wiping her tears. "Thank you for being honest. I hope you find happiness, John." As I left the cafe, I felt a sense of relief. It wasn't the ending I had hoped for, but it was a step towards healing. Life would go on, and I would find a way to move forward. After my meeting with Emily, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. It was as if a chapter of my life had closed, leaving me staring at a blank page, unsure of what to write next. The next few weeks were a blur of routine: work, gym, sleep, punctuated by moments of overwhelming loneliness. One Saturday morning, I decided to take a drive up the coast. San Diego's coastal highway was a balm for my restless mind, the ocean's vastness making my problems seem a little smaller. As I drove, I thought about my life and the choices that had led me here. I needed a fresh start, something to break the cycle of doubt and regret. I stopped at a small beachside cafe in Encinitas, a place I'd never been before. The salty air and the sound of waves crashing against the shore provided a soothing background as I sipped my coffee. Watched people pass by, families, surfers, couples, and wondered how many of them had their own hidden struggles. As I was lost in thought, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Linda, Mark's wife. We had exchanged a few texts after I told her about the affair, but we hadn't spoken since. "Hi, John. I hope you're doing okay. I was wondering if you'd be open to meeting for coffee. There's something I'd like to discuss. Let me know." I hesitated, then typed back a quick response. "Sure, Linda. How about this afternoon?" We agreed to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our neighborhoods. As I walked in, I saw her sitting at a corner table, looking as nervous as I felt. Linda was a few years younger than me, but the stress of recent events had clearly taken a toll on her. "Hi, Linda." I greeted her, forcing a smile. "Hi, John. Thanks for meeting me," she replied, her voice soft but steady. We ordered our drinks and made small talk for a few minutes before she finally broached the subject. "I wanted to thank you for telling me the truth about Mark and Emily," she began. "It was hard, but I needed to know. Mark and I are working through things." "I'm glad to hear that," said, though I wasn't sure if it was true. "How are you holding up?" "It's been rough," she admitted. "But we're in counseling, trying to rebuild trust. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm willing to give it a shot for our kids' sake." I nodded, understanding the complexity of her situation. "I wish you both the best, Linda. It takes a lot of strength to try and rebuild." She smiled faintly. "Thanks, John. Also wanted to tell you that Mark is willing to take responsibility for the baby. He's been in touch with Emily about it." Hearing that brought a sense of closure. "That's good to hear. The baby deserves to know his father." We chatted a bit more, sharing our experiences and offering each other support. It felt good to talk to someone who truly understood what I was going through. As I drove back home, I felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. Talking to Linda had given me a sense of closure I hadn't realized I needed. It was a reminder that while the pain of betrayal was deep, it was possible to find a way forward. Over the next few months, I focused on rebuilding my life. I spent more time with friends, took up new hobbies, and even started dating again, though cautiously. The fear of getting hurt again was always there, but I knew I couldn't let it control me. One evening, as I was getting ready to leave work, my colleague Alex walked over to my desk. "Hey, John. A few of us are grabbing drinks at that new bar down the street. You in?" he asked. Hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Sure, why not?" At the bar, surrounded by laughter and good company, I realized how much I had missed this, being part of a community, feeling connected. As the night went on, I found myself laughing more, the sting of the past starting to fade. Later, as I walked home under the starry sky, I felt a renewed sense of hope. Life was unpredictable, and I couldn't control everything that happened, but I could choose how to respond. I could choose to heal, to grow, and to open my heart again. Reached my apartment, feeling a sense of peace. The journey wasn't over, but I was on the right path. And for the first time in a long while, I felt truly optimistic about the future. The months after my conversation with Linda were transformative. I had started to regain my sense of self, and my confidence was slowly rebuilding. Life had a way of surprising you when you least expected it. One of those surprises came in the form of a new project at work. My boss called me into his office one afternoon. "John, I've got a new assignment for you. It's a big client, and I think you're the right person for the job." "Sure, what's the project?" asked, intrigued. "We're launching a new marketing campaign for a tech startup in Los Angeles. You'll be heading the team," he said, handing me a thick file. "There's a lot riding on this, so I need your best work." "I'm on it," I replied, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was the kind of challenge I needed to fully immerse myself in something positive. That evening, I started poring over the details of the project. It felt good to focus on work, to channel my energy into something productive. As the weeks went by, I threw myself into the campaign, working long hours but enjoying every minute of it. During this time, I also made a conscious effort to reconnect with friends and family. I realized how much I had isolated myself over the past year, and it was time to change that. One Saturday, I met up with my old friend, Matt, for a beer at our favorite bar. "Dude, you've been MIA," Matt said, clinking his glass against mine. "Glad to see you're back." "Yeah, it's been a rough ride, but I'm getting there," I replied, taking a sip. "How's life treating you?" Same old, but hey, I heard you're leading a big project at work." "That's awesome," he said, genuinely happy for me. "Thanks, man. It's been a lifesaver, honestly," I said, smiling. As the project deadline approached, I felt a sense of accomplishment that I hadn't felt in a long time. Our campaign was a success, and the client was thrilled with our work. My boss called me into his office once again. "John, you did an outstanding job," he said, shaking my hand. "I'm proud of you." "Thanks, I couldn't have done it without the team," I replied, feeling a swell of pride. After the successful project, I decided to treat myself to a weekend getaway. I booked a cabin in Big Bear Lake, a peaceful retreat where I could clear my mind and reflect on everything that had happened. As I sat on the porch, looking out at the serene lake, I realized how far I had come. The pain of Emily's betrayal still lingered, but it no longer defined me. I had learned to trust myself again, to find joy in small moments, and to embrace the uncertainty of life. I was ready for whatever came next. On my last evening at the cabin, I received a text from Emily. My heart raced as I opened it, unsure of what to expect. "Hi John, I hope you're doing well. Just wanted to apologize again for everything. I've moved in with my mom, and I'm focusing on being a good mother. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me someday. Take care." I stared at the message for a long time. Forgiveness was a difficult concept, but I knew it was essential for my own peace of mind. Typed back a simple response. "Thanks, Emily. I wish you all the best." As I drove back to San Diego, I felt a sense of closure. It was time to fully move on and embrace new beginnings. Life was unpredictable, but I was ready to face it head-on. If you found the story interesting, please subscribe to the channel, press the bell, and don't forget to give us a like. Thanks for watching. See you all soon.